Hi everyone, tonight we're going to be working on rendering, and we'll be working on techniques both using the rendering pens and also using some kind of a soft type of art pencil. The industry standard for that is Prismacolor, but there are a lot of other nice types of pencils out there that you can use. So one thing that I'd like to show you before we start our rendering is the way these rendering pens kind of can affect the line work on your plans. So generally, we're either rendering something that is printed on bond, regular paper, is kind of the name for that. So we can get this to focus. There we go. So this is an example of a graphic printed on bond. Sometimes we also print our graphics on Mylar or vellum, or we might have a hand-drawn graphic on our sketch paper. So the pens react a little bit differently depending on what medium that you're using. I did post some sample colors of pens a couple weeks ago. So if you haven't taken a look at those, I like that list because it shows how the pens look on different types of papers and how the color can really change. It tends to be much more vibrant on regular bond paper. But before we start, I want to just show you a little bit about how some of these different markers react. So one of the popular markers in our profession is the ad markers. This is made with xylene, and that's the thing that makes it flow across the paper. So a lot of starting out designers don't like to use these ad markers because they don't feel like they can control the amount of bleeding. All I can say is at the end of the day, the xylene, which is the strong smelling kind of solvent in it, does tend to blend the lines together really well. So you kind of get a solid color. It kind of flows into one another. So that is an ad xylene in kind of an orangey red color. And then I've got, this is a Prismacolor. So Prismacolor pens are made with alcohol as their kind of solvent. So what happens with Prismacolors, you can see these are very similar colored pens for a reason. When I try and fill in an area, I tend to get more lines. It doesn't flow into one another as well. Let me see if I can get a little bit closer to you because I know these cameras don't have the best. But again, this is the Prismacolor right here, and you can kind of see these overlapping lines in there. And then this is the ad marker. And so the xylene kind of flows into one another and you get this really smooth color. So that's one of the reasons that people in our industry tend to favor those. Now I have a water-based pen here. This is my Sharpie Stylus. And I'm just going to do a line. And I'll show you that whether you're using the Prismacolor or the xylene-based ad markers, these water-based markers hold up pretty well for either one of these coloring over the top. If I had a Sharpie permanent marker around, which I don't seem to have on my desk at the moment, and I did the same squiggly line like this and then used these markers to go through it, I would actually have the xylene really dissolve the permanent marker and the alcohol dissolve it to a degree. So it's kind of counterintuitive that the water-based markers hold up well with these types of rendering pens, much more so than a permanent pen. When we look at the line work printed out by a copier, it tends to act more like a permanent pen. So you'll see if you decided to buy some pens, you'll have to be careful when you're rendering, because if you keep going back and forth over one area, it'll tend to dissolve the line work. So just try and make one pass, one quick pass at your rendering, and then your line work should stay intact. if I had something like this, where maybe I have a hand-drawn graphic and I've got a tree here that I'm going to render, and maybe I know that I'm in permanent marker and I'm rendering either on vellum or on tissue paper, and I'm worried about that line disappearing, I can always turn it over backwards and color the back side of that line. And then my lines don't dissolve. So that's kind of a little trick if you're using these markers. And then we've got the color. And you'll see when we render on tissue or vellum, we get this very light, soft look to the colors. The same colors get very, very bold when we use them on regular bond. So for example, here it is on tissue paper. Right, we've kind of got this, it's kind of a red-orange color, but if I put this on bond, it's a much more robust red color. And it'll flow into one another, but it doesn't do so as readily as on the tissue paper. It really kind of flows, keeps it kind of soft. It will kind of work its way together. I'm going to do that same kind of overlay to see if it shows up on bond a little bit better. Or if I'm coloring in a big block of area, you'll see that this will take a little while to dry, but it is starting to kind of blend together, where this has clear lines on each row of marker that I put. So everybody has their preference. I think these are much like the Prismacolor and the I think Copic is also an alcohol base, but I'm not sure about that. They have a tighter nib. They actually have 2 nibs on each side, so you can get in with that fine detail work. So as a beginner, I know I really liked that because I was very concerned with staying inside the lines. These tend to be less controllable, but now at this stage in my career, I like them because you get a nice flow across it. If you're sensitive to solvent smells, the xylene is a very strong smell. So a lot of times when we're rendering in the classroom, we have to open all the doors because people can be sensitive to it. So the Prismacolor is an alcohol based and it's not as strong of a smell. So just a quick little overview about those 2 things. Now you can see that I taped down a piece of tissue. You'll want to tape down a piece of tissue or paper if you have any markers that you're going to follow along with. But we'll do the 3 renderings. I'll do key parts of it anyway in both marker with a pencil overlay and then just pencil. So I'm going to start with marker and a pencil overlay. You can see on this graphic the shadow side of the trees is pointing down, but north is pointing up. So earlier we talked about north is the shadowy side of a tree. So on this one, they have pulled the shadows to the lower right, or sometimes they pull them to the lower left because they read better graphically. But it's not a true representation of where the shady part of the landscape is going to be. So different firms have kind of direction on how they want you to show shadows. I've worked for firms that are both very scientific. They want the shadows to where the shadows would be actually in the landscape. And then I've worked for firms that are more conceptual designers, and so they want the shadows to look their best so that the graphic looks really stunning online. So just there isn't a right or a wrong, especially in this class. I would say the thing to be conscious of is make sure whichever direction you're showing your shadows, that it's consistent throughout your plan, and know that north facing is the shadowy side in real life. So if you're planning your planting arrangement, you would want the shade tolerant plants to be over in here because they're going to not get a lot of sun from these trees. So that's the more important understanding from my perspective. I am going to pick a couple colors for our pool. A lot of people really get excited about rendering water. So I've tried to pick out different types of water for you guys to practice on. So I've got a bit of a darker blue here and a lighter blue. I always like, those are actually about the same color blue. I always like to have a piece of paper just to play around with on the side so that I can, you know, test my colors out. Get a nice dark blue in conjunction with my, there we go. All right. And again, if I'm using markers, I'm always protecting the surface below because these markers do tend to bleed through. So as trees, we have our direction of sun coming this way, and this is the shadowy side of the tree. The opposite is true with something that goes down, because the shadow would actually fall on this nearest side. This is actually our spot that would be in sun. So things that are popping up, shadows on this side, things that are pushed down, shadows are opposite. So on this particular arrangement, I'm just going to take, I've got a real nice deep shadow that the illustrator's already put in for me. So I'm taking my darkest blue here, really deep, kind of dark blue, and I'm just creating more of a, you know, gradient into the lighter blues that I'll use in a minute. So again, the same technique, we'll do it in pencil and pen, but the technique is the same. You want to kind of enhance that shadowy side, and then the remainder, I'm going to put my kind of medium blue in here. And it's okay, you know, if you go a little bit outside the edges, that is just fine. There's an artistic feel, is what I've come to realize with rendering, that I think is important. So we're going to put down some of the pen colors first. I'm a real big fan of the warm grays, or the French grays. So I like to use kind of the number 1, number 3, real light colors, or real buff colors in the paving. And then I like to go back on top of them with pencils. So in this drawing, you can see I've got a few trees, and you can see the understory of planting below it. That's pretty typical. Because I maybe am coming in to infill around this pool, or adding this pool, for this particular rendering, I'm going to keep these trees as almost invisible. And sometimes we do this if we have big canopy trees, and we really want to show this kind of expensive design down below. So, you know, this pool and this, you know, Flagstone pavers, I mean, this is probably a $150,000 to $200,000 pool. So we want that area to look good, and that should be the main focus of this. So I'm just going to color right through those trees. I'm going to focus on the hardscape. And when I'm rendering in pen, I tend to use a limited palette for pens. And then I go over the top with pencil and try and bring out some of the different colors with pencils. So that's the technique we're going to use here. And then we'll do the same technique in pencil only, because that's probably what most of you guys have. If we were live on the campus, we would have this in pen, and we would have pens and pencils available, because we have some like just for use in the classroom there. So, but they're pretty pricey, so it was definitely not a required material. You can see I'm going through this wooden arbor and kind of making it this base neutral color. It's pretty hard to screw up rendering. The biggest mistake you can make is to accidentally color hardscape green. So I like to color my hardscape first to try and avoid doing that. I've got these little stepping stones under the tree here, so I'm going to go ahead and color those in. A little secondary pathway there, right? We've got that filled in. I'm going to actually add some color to these other pine trees. So I'm going to play up the shadowy side on these pines. That's certainly, you know, pull some of these almost like little spokes. Again, I'll go over these with pencil. You can see on the shadowy side, I'm putting more dark colored little spokes, just tracing really over the graphic that's in there. All right, some more over here. Under the, over the tree, under the tree, I'm not sure. Let's say they're taller than the tree. All right. I'm going to take a couple lighter spokes, add them in, not many. I will go over all this with pencil. I might get a couple colors of green from my pine trees. All right. Again, if I'm doing this in pencil, we're going to do it the same process. We're just using pencil. So we'll use a few different greens on those. Again, these bigger trees are going to remain clear. Let's see what colors is apple green, that color. Apple green and a very, very light green. What's this color? Chrome green. No, not liking that. So this is why I like to sketch out on another piece of paper. Is find there's such a big range of greens. I like to find a couple of greens that match one another. Moss green. That's looking okay. Moss green. I've got my 3 different green colors here. So I'm just kind of scribbling around and playing with my greens. I'm going with this kind of medium green, a little bit darker of a green, and then this kind of yellowy green, because I know in the next one I have some grass. And then, of course, you already saw me use this super dark green with the pine trees. So we will. I'm going to color in some of these. So I start with the lighter green on my solid trees. All right, I got a couple of them over here. Color them all the way in solid. And then I want to really enhance the darker side of the area. So, all right. So this is my shadow side. I'm just going to darken that side up a little bit more. And I will go over that in pencil. Let's see. I can do the same thing, put a base coat on some of these shrubs. All right. Here. Again, under the tree canopy, I'm just going to render through this, pretending the tree is not going to bug me, right? So I can kind of pull some of those out. And now I think I might have a really light green. Low, well, might be good. I usually don't try and use too many greens, but I want this understory of ground cover to be very light in color so that it kind of fades back. Kind of like pen weights, where you use your lightest color on the ground plane or the smallest pen weight, and as you go up, it becomes a little bit more bold. So I'm just filling that in with a really nice willow green. I do try and stick to about 3 greens. I'm going a little bit over that this time. And now I'm going to shift to pencils and really start to pop some of this out. So I'm going to pick a deep dark green, and again I'm going to go over that area on these trees and really just start to darken it up on the shadowy side and add some texture in. Right, I'm going to do the same on these little shrubs. starts giving them a little bit more dimension when we start really darkening up the shadowy side of our shrubs and our trees, starts giving them a little bit more of a roundness to them. And then I also like to use my lovely canary yellow to really start to highlight some yellow or canary yellow and start to add some highlights where the sun is kind of hitting these and it brightens them up a little bit. Right. So you can see over here on these trees, start to brighten them up. Right, I might add some yellow highlights on the sunny side of these pine trees. Start to brighten them up a little bit. Where the sun's glancing off that side. Right, and then I can also darken some of the darker side and really start to fill that in. Nice dark pine trees, adding a little bit more volume to that. All right, pines. We've got our little shrubs highlighted. These are understory, but I could highlight their little sunny spots too. And then let's go back to the water. So we kind of want to do the same thing with water. Last time we worked on what was called a 2-color gradient in our, at least our little exercise for color. So I kind of want to do the same thing here. And what I'm looking for is to find a real nice blue that kind of maybe is a little bit lighter than this darkest blue and a little bit darker than that one. And then a white. And I'm going to do a 2-color gradient over the top of that. Let's see. What is this? Denim blue. That looks like a nice one. So I'm going to say this is where my pool is going to be brightest. And so pools can be kind of still water. If I wanted, I could add some pens in here, some pen weight in here. I usually take a very light pen weight with still water, and I could add kind of lines of movement like this, coming across the water. Just a little bit of movement. Kind of add some interest in there. So you can see that. I just added some little bit of detail in that water. You know, pools are an expensive amenity, so it's always good to make them really pop out and be able to sell that item and convince your client that that is what you think their money should be well used on. So I'm starting with that 2-color gradient like we practiced on the worksheet. Our color study, and I'm really brightening up this corner that's probably most in sunlight. All right. And I'm pulling some of that white over the top and kind of fading it off. And then I'm going to come in on the other side with my denim blue, and I'm going to make this a really dark corner that's in shadow. And I'm going to start to overlay these two. And that's where my 2-color gradient starts to come in and create kind of a mirrored effect on this water to really make it stand out. Again, on this particular one, I'm using the denim blue pencil over the top with white. Okay. So you get this lovely kind of mirrored effect on the water. And it starts to really stand out and be a real kind of focal point of that rendering. For the trellis, I'm going to take a brown pencil and go over that woody part. Maybe also the diving board. We'll just make that a wood diving board like back in the day when we all got splinters on it. I'm going to kind of carefully color over the top of that. I'm being a little bit careful just to try and stay on the little small sticks. Now I printed these out at 8.5 by 11 because I figured that's what you guys all have at home. I did print these out at 70% full scale, and that seemed to fit them onto the 8.5 by 11 pretty well. If you print them out just fit to scale, it might be a little bit smaller, but it does get a little bit difficult to see all of the little small timbers like that. But now starting to make that pop out, giving it a little bit dark color. So now I'm going to go in with this paving. This is a flagstone paving, and I'm just going to intermittently start to just put a little bit of a light wash over some of these stones. And I'm going to pick a few different colors and start to really give this stone paving some interesting color, depth, and dimension. All right. And again, if I'm working in pencil, and I'll show that to you next, I'm really following the same exact patterns of layering color. I'm just using pencil only. Okay. So the process is very, very similar. Maybe on this one, I'm going to take a little bit of a light blue color. Some blue, maybe this is kind of a slate, and it's got some highs and lows that I want to give it some interest. As you know, stone comes in a range of colors. You can have multiple blue stones. So depending on maybe what type of stone you're trying to use as part of your palette, we might go in and have samples of the stone with us to show our client. I like cream pencil a lot, something that is kind of one of my go-tos. So I'm going to add some cream on these remaining ones and maybe brighten some of this paving up a little bit. And you can even go over some of the joints with either the brown. In this case, I'm going over with that cream colored pencil. But you can kind of see it starts to give that stone then some interest and some depth just with that simple color overlay. And then you can do the same with the little pavers under here, so that pathway becomes real apparent. All right. And up some cream. All right, so you get the drift. We've talked about how to make your pool have a mirror, more of a still water mirrored finish. We've got our small shrubs being like little balls of shrubs. We've got some of our pine trees, how to render those, some regular evergreen trees, and kind of this treatment to this expensive paving. So that's a kind of a marker and rendering combination. I found that in person, these tend to look a little bit more striking, but when you go to scan them, a lot of times the scanners have gotten so sensitive, they pick up all the lines and the markers. So when we know we're going to scan a hand-drawn rendering, sometimes the pencil looks better. So, you know, either one is fine for this class. I do not expect you to go out and buy pencils. We're going to start with the water. Again, I'm adding that nice shadow with the darker color blue. In this case, I'm using a denim pencil. And I'm doing that 2-color kind of gradient overlay going directly onto that because we don't have the pen layer. right? So remember with that one, we have this kind of one dark corner and it fades out. So I just kind of slowly build up layers when I'm working like that, and I bring it about 3/4 of the way across, right? Right. Now, if I wanted to on this, I could also put those kind of lines of, you know, just still water. A lot of times we'll put in little graphics like this just to indicate still kind of movement. And then I'm going to come back over here. Bring this over a little bit further because I definitely want it to look like a pool. So you get really light. I'm going to bring this over a little bit further and then maybe darken this up a little bit. Creating this gradient. And then I've got, of course, my white. So this is my lightest color over in here. Bring this across. So it's starting to mix in with the blue and give me an interesting color with just the wax on it. A lot of people like to use like a crosshatch too, so you can certainly start integrating that in if you like that technique. That is a common one. Usually we do one color one way and then the second color another way. And so we kind of get this blue, a little bit of a mirror effect on that too, right? If we're starting with just our paving, again, I'm probably going to start with a very light colored, like a warm gray for my paving, just like I did with that other one, except for I did it in pen. So I'm going to do an overall lay. I'm going to keep it pretty light, like I'm just doing a light coating because I don't want to put so much down that I can't get more pencil color on top of it. So again, just filling in with an overall of this. This particular one is a French gray. And I am, in this case, I'm not going over the trellis because I'm going to be able to go over that directly in with my pencil. All right, just putting a base coat of pencil down for all of this. Again, we're going to keep these trees invisible. All right, so I got my base coat down. And now I might add some of those highlights and lowlights, some of the blues in there. Kind of getting some differentiation. Again, this type of flagstone would be a very expensive surface. So, you know, as I'm trying to convince my client to spend some money on what I think will make their yard look beautiful, I do try and spend a little time on these more expensive surfaces to help sell the ideas in them and encourage them to, that's how they should spend their money. So kind of see we're getting some of that variation. It is more subtle with pencils, but it certainly, you know, creates a nice effect. And again, if you're going to scan this, usually the pencil scans a lot better. Find kind of a nice medium green. Kind of a yellow green, but we're going to go ahead with it. And you know, a lot of times when I'm doing a rendering for my final project, I usually print out 2 copies of my plans, and that's the way we do it, is we print out from our originals onto bond or onto vellum. If some people like to render on vellum and get that softer look. And then we can use one as almost like a practice. So I kind of work out the colors on my practice one and figure out what colors would look best in for my final one. Again, I'm just creating that kind of edging in that shadowy side real quickly, trying to make it look a little bit more round, all these little shrubs. For the pine trees, same process, right? I'm just going to kind of bring the darker pencil. I'm going to bring it all over, but I'm going to make the darker side a little bit darker. Right. Okay. And I can maybe use that medium green to kind of add some more green in here, more of a medium green. And I'm kind of doing this fast so we don't have like a 2-hour video tonight. And then on the sunny side, I'm going to maybe highlight with some yellow just to really make that side show like it's in light. I can do the same thing with the shrubs, you know, and really brighten up the spot where light's going to hit it. So if I think about, you know, a tree or a shrub in nature, and my little round tree right here, and I've got my sun coming down over here, right? So this is going to be the part that's in sunlight, and this is going to be the part that's in shadow. So I'm really trying to replicate that when it's in plan view. I've got this part that's, you know, bright and being lit up by the sun, and I have this darker kind of portion that is in a little bit of shadow. So almost getting that volume with the shrubs down below. So again, we've got our shrubs with pencil, we've got our kind of mirror effect with pencil and the custom paving on this particular one, and then the palm trees, or the pine trees. So some ideas on how to do that in pen versus pencil. So not all that different looking. So pencil is just fine to render in this class. Okay, that is rendering number 1. You've got 3 of them to do. So here is rendering number 2. This one has lawn, so let's first use our rendering pens for this. So I'm going to start with kind of a yellow-green for this lawn area, and just highlight that. I've also got this little waterfall area over here. I'm going to block that in. Again, I kind of go around the edges just because these pens are prone to a lot of bleeding. And you can see there's areas where I'm not perfect. I've learned don't stress about it. It's all part of the artistic process, right? So I've got this lawn area. It's got a little mound right there. You can see the contours have kind of been highlighted. I've also got this other little grassy area over here. Parklet. Right. Color that in really quick. I'm going to color some of the water in. So I can see this little body of water right here. It's like kind of coming through the rocks. Let's see. Maybe like this, I think. Something like that. Anyway, we got my blue. I've got these trees over here. So I could do these a very light green. Right. do 3 of these as an evergreen tree and maybe 1 as a deciduous tree. Darkening up. I'm just using the pens again. I will go over it in pencil and give it a little bit more volume. You can see the shadows are coming the opposite way, right? The sun's coming in this way. Now I'm going to take my neutral color, so this could be a beige, it could be a French gray. I've got this little row of stones along here, along this little water feature. I'm going to highlight those. I'm also going to highlight the paving around the park and the benches. All right, so I'm just kind of filling all that in. So, you know, very much a concrete paved surface in keeping with a city public park. Bench under there. I'm going to go, these are little people walking on the park. I'm just going to go right over them. If I wanted to, I could bring them out with little like red shirts or something like that. Okay, so I got some of my basic pen work down. Let's say I wanted to create a fall type of tree. I could do that. Maybe the center one is a deciduous tree. So I could do that by grabbing some orangey colors. And I'm just kind of playing with this. Kind of a light flesh color over here. Maybe I want that to be like a Chinese pistache that turns beautiful around this time of year. Kind of my darker orange along there. If I was maybe wanting to represent that this was in springtime, I could do the same thing with a nice kind of like if I want to put like a purple flowering tree, like a jacaranda, I can render them in purple. Just playing with some of my colors. Oh, those don't work all together. That's not bad. Will work okay. So for these, I'm going to take my lighter purple and color these in. Now, you know, I had someone point out to me that sometimes think about a season that you're going to render in. So if we're rendering this park and we have fall trees and then purple trees, that might look, some people might think it looks kind of silly. So I would say pick spring or pick fall as a season and render accordingly. But, you know, you can see we've got some kind of purple trees and some fall trees. So for you guys just learning, that should work okay for you. My deeper, here's my, so on this water feature, I can see that my shadow is over here. So that means this same side is going to be my bright spot and the opposite is going to be my shadow. So that took me a while to get that, so it's okay if you don't get that right away. Keep thinking about it because it's going down, so the shadow is actually off the edge of the paving there. And you know, this is like kind of moving water, so I can make a little bit of lighter areas to it, right, and brighten it up. If I wanted to, for moving water, I could also use something like a white gouache or a kind of the correction fluid, like a liquid paper, works really well because it kind of floats up on top of the rendering. I could put some little splashes of water in here and just kind of really start to brighten it up and draw a little bit of attention to that. I could use a heavier white in there. And I'm going to show you some of that just with the pen, and then around here I just dabbed some liquid paper in there. You can see the highlights in here. I might take my pencil and start to blend these a little bit more together. Put a few different pencil colors in there. Actually, just the white. Start to blend these colors. We end up with kind of moving water right there that starts to have a lot of life into it. Again, the gouache or the liquid paper floats up on top of the pencil and starts to give it a lot of depth and gives it an attention-getting kind of nature. So for the turf, I usually like to take kind of a shade darker than this, and I can see that my shadow's on this side. So if I have this contour, here's where I'm going to be in light, and here's where I'm going to be more in shadow. So I'm going to make this contour have a little bit more darkness to it, right on the other side of this little ridge line. So my little berm starts to stand out a bit. And then again, over all the way to the edge of this darkness, this darker side, I'm just kind of filling that in a little bit. All right. And then I've got my light glazing from this direction over here, so I can brighten that a little bit with my yellow and add a little pizzazz to it. I could also add a little wash of yellow on this side because the sun's going to graze across, it's going to be in shadow, and then it's going to graze across the bottom again. Same with this little guy, add a little light colored wash on this little flat piece of grass, and then the edge that's on the shadowy side is going to get a little bit darker. Right. For the boulders, I could add some depth and dimension with my brown pencil, start to give them a little bit of volume, and make this look a little, stand out a little bit more like a stream bed by darkening it up. I could also take a cream colored pencil and lighten some spots on those boulders where the sun might be hitting it, and again, giving it some depth. If I have these wooden benches, I can go over it with my pencil to make it, deepen it up a little bit like wood, right? And then maybe the paving, I want to lighten it. So I could do a cream wash over the top of it and start to really lighten it up a little bit. Okay. For my deciduous trees, I might take a dark kind of this is like a pumpkin orange, and just add a little bit more color around the edge. And then maybe in the very center of it, I just have my yellow wash again, starting to brighten that up a little bit. All right, purple, I could do the same thing. If I grab the purple pencils, I like this, just a magenta color. So because the complementary color to purple is getting pretty close to yellow, it's kind of an orangey yellow, I'm a little worried that if I use that on top of this, it's going to make it a little bit muddy. So I'm going to use my cream pencil instead to give this a little bit of highlight, so it won't conflict quite as much with my purple and cancel each other out. So again, I start to give those trees some depth and dimension. Again, the water starting to really pop out of this arrangement. Also the lawn areas, you know, with the shadows of the light and the dark. So that's one of the great things about pencils is like getting your base color on and then kind of bringing it to life with the pencils over the top. You know, for my main trees in the back, same thing, I could bring those out, kind of really deepen those. maybe these, I'll put that same yellow wash over the top. That really starts to brighten this up. And you start to get a lot of kind of roundness and depth into the rendering. So there you go, pen and pencil on that one. We'll do the same thing real quick in just pencil. So I'm going to start with a wash of the green. I'm going to keep it pretty light because I want to get those highlights of where the light is hitting the grassy areas. So I'm just taking kind of a yellow-green, filling it all in to start. All right, kind of a medium pressure. All right. Here. Okay, I'm going to pull my highlighted areas. I've already figured out where those are and really start to add those in where the light's going to glance off of this. And again, down here. Right, and over here, this side of my lawn. And then I'm going to come back in with that same yellow-green pencil and really start to darken the other side as I'm working in pencil. Right. Same thing here. We put this part in shadow and really start to darken it up a bit. Right. That, and also along this edge. Blend it a little bit. And I can sit here and, you know, play with layering this colors for hours if you want. But we'll make this quick so you don't have a super long video to sit through. So now we've got kind of some of those same effects on the lawn going on. For our deciduous tree, I'm actually going to start with a yellow because I know that's going to be in sunlight. And then I'm going to just use my orangey kind of pumpkin color to fill it in a little bit and create that tree that's in its lovely fall colors. For my jacarandas, I might go with kind of a lighter pinky purple on that one. A little bit. Make colors that are a little bit more accurate to a jacaranda. I don't have a lavender. I kind of got a lavender. Let's try this. Light kind of purple over the top, almost a lilac color. I don't know if that's the name of this pen. What is the name of this one? Oh, yeah, lilac. How about that? I guess that's pretty accurate. And then I'm going to come around at the base a little bit darker. So this would be like my spring flowering tree, just like the pen. So I can use some of this. You can also stipple if you're a stippler. So that's like adding dots instead of doing the strokes. You can do cross hatches on these. So you start to see those different colors coming into play. For the hardscape, again, I'm going to probably do a French gray and put that over the top. Don't necessarily have to go over the wood benches because I can just fill those in directly over the top with pencil. All right. Go. Got that edge. I could take my pencil and darken this up a bit. Give it a little bit of depth. Same with my rocks. I'm probably going to try and not go too crazy on many different types of neutrals. So probably going to use like 1 or 2 neutrals, just like I do 2 or 3 greens. And then, so that everything kind of has a cohesive look to it. So again, my water is the shadowy side is over here. I'm going to make that a little bit deeper, just like I did with pens, and start pulling that over. And then on the other side, this is going to be my white side, where things are a little bit lighter. little channel here. I'm gonna start to get some blue in there. Again, I can still use the whiteout to start creating some little spray, a little effect on it. Right. So we've got something that's starting to look like this. So it's, you know, nice little rendering. We could do some of the highs and lows with the rock. One thing we worked on last time. All right. Okay. I could bring up some of the highlights on it by using my cream. Cream is one of my go-to colors to kind of add those highlights, especially on rocks and neutral things. So you can see, you know, quicker finish on this because we're just, you know, trying to get through this quickly. But again, a little softer effect in pencil. It's a little bit more colorful in live person than you guys see it on the screen, but certainly respectful rendering in pencil, and it's going to scan a lot better. So even though this is a little bit more vibrant to start with, if you're scanning it, it actually doesn't look as good to me when it's scanned typically. So anyway, there's your pencil and pen and pencil. And then last but not least, how to render in sections. So we've got this little cross section, and you can see there's a main tree, a road, there's some people, we've got these boulders, shrubs, and pine trees. So if we start with pen overlay, I'm just going to put a base coat down with my pine trees real quick. Okay. I could even do the same thing. I'll keep the same color for this tree down here. Right. Right. I could make this a fall tree and make this all in autumn colors if I wanted to. So for these, I'm going to take my dark green. That's not my dark green. Where'd my dark green go? Apple green. With my these guys, I might just add some. And it's okay if it's very different looking like that, because I can use my pencils to soften it up. So not a problem. So, and then here I'm going to use a little bit lighter green down at this bottom area. Again, this is the part to me that's in shadow. I see more detail on the actual graphic. So that's how I know this designer is kind of telling me that's where the shadow is, because I see more detail down there. And let's say these are more of a yellow-green shrub. So I'm going to color these a little bit different color. Maybe what's that's pretty close. Pretty close. Right. See that xylene is really blending together there. My boulders. Let's go. My neutrals. Okay. Solar panels. Probably make those neutral. Probably make my car neutral. Probably not the window. I might try and keep that clear if I think about it. I can make my little people neutral at first and then put some pencil overlay on them. And then I'm just going to go over this with pencil to start and, you know, kind of blend these lines in and give it a little bit overlay of a texture. Right. And then maybe I want the sun to be really highlighting this side. Some of these little patches are getting lit by the sun. Maybe it's kind of a yellowy. Same with this guy. I want him to be really in sunshine down here and shadow down in here. All right. Same here. These are going to be some darker colors here. The bottom of my little round shrubs here. And again, sunlight kind of glancing off the top of this and just brightening the tops of those. My boulders, similar to, you know, round things, render similarly. I'm going to put the bottom of the boulders in shadow. And I'm going to use my wonderful cream pencil to highlight the tops of those boulders and really brighten them up like they're in sunshine. For my cars and my people, I can go over the top of them and, you know, put an overlay of like blue. Maybe she's got some blue plants and an orange shirt on. Maybe Dad's got some brown pants on the bike. And maybe he's dressed kind of in earthy colors. So he's got a beige shirt. And the little girl, oh, she's going to be in a purple dress today. I can kind of start to color those in. For the car, maybe I like, oh, we're going to make it a rusty orange car because it's a pretty cool color around town as of late. So there's that. I might put a little gray down for the bumper. Right. The plate a little dark if I wanted to. Put white on the headlights. You could sit here and play with the car all day long if you wanted to. White and the thing. And yeah, I got a little section that starts to have some life in it. So there you go. We'll do the same thing in pencil real quick, but quick and easy on the pencil section. Same thing. I'm going to just take a medium green and start to give this a little texture in the direction of these pine branches. Just doing kind of a medium coat here of a base color. And then I'm going to come over with first my lows. So I'm going to make some of these layers of conifer branches darker. Right. And I might highlight some of the spots where I feel like the sun might be glancing off of it, just to brighten it up a little bit. Right. Something like that. Starts to give me some life on those trees. Same with the shrubs. Right. I'm going to do an overlay of green here. We'll make the tree fall this time because we're in fall in pencil. But you can make it a spring tree, a fall tree, an evergreen tree, whatever you like. Right. And there's some highlights on those shrubs. We've got our boulders. Again, I'm going to start with kind of a basic, kind of a French gray as my medium color. Same with this. Same with, I guess I won't with this. I'll just do the bumpers in that color. And then I can just color them in. Let's see. Let's do an over color of yellow. This has been my full fall golden colors. All right. And then I'm going to take a gradient of the pumpkin on this one. If I wanted to, I could even go to kind of add a little bit more depth with a deep kind of a reddish color. I don't know what color this is, but let's give that a try. And even have a few layers of color there. Make that a nice, vibrant, fall colored tree. There we go. All right, boulders, same thing. Just like the little shrubs, the lower edges are going to be in shadow. Right. The upper edges are going to have some sunlight glancing off of them. So again, I like cream to brighten that up. That's just a good color to have on hand for many, many different things. Maybe she's got a red shirt because it's fall with her jeans on. Right. So color those. Again, we went through the car, probably has white windows and white headlights. Since we're in fall, we'll make his color a little bit darker. There, right. So pretty much pencil turning out very, very similar to pen actually in the section. A little bit more robust colors again in person, but then if you went to scan it, the pencil drawing is actually usually going to scan a bit better. So there you go, quick overview of rendering in both pencil and pen. So I hope you enjoyed it and have fun coloring. It's always nice at work when we actually get to color. It's few and far between. So enjoy, everyone. Have fun playing with colors tonight.